right, welcome everyone to our third session of Unpacking the Pyramid Model with Echo. And I will get started with our intro slides. We are recording this Echo session for educational and quality improvement purposes. By participating in the session, you are consenting to be recorded. And if you do not wish to be recorded, please disconnect from the session. Echo is a participation-based group. It is meant to be a community and help with networking and help with helping each other with our problems that we're going through and learning more. So we do really want this to be a great opportunity for you to meet others. So if you could put your name and your organization and your contact information in the chat, that would be great. Just a quick rundown of the components of an Echo session. We will have a didactic speaker, which today will be Tweety Yates, and she will have about 30 to 45 minutes to speak. Then we will have a real situations, real solutions presentation and discussion. And then we will break off into breakout rooms and go over that real situations, real solutions presentation. The trainings for the next few months are all about the workbook Unpacking the Pyramid Model. When you attend 3 Echo Pyramid trainings, we will send you this workbook for free. So this is our third training, and we have been keeping track of everyone who has been attending. And I believe we already have your addresses. So we will be sending you those workbooks soon. So be on the lookout for those. It's a great workbook that helps with teaching foundational skills that will just help us become better providers. Also, every time you attend, you'll be entered to win a Pyramid Classroom kit. There's the Tucker Turtle Kit, Problem Solver, Super Friends, Visual Classroom Visual Display, and Emotional Literacy. And we will be making sure everyone gets entered into the raffle for that. We ask that you protect individual privacy. When you're sharing information, avoid using any real first, middle, or last names or initials. Don't identify any family members, friends, coworkers, email addresses. Make sure you de-identify examples and situations. And if you're concerned or have any questions, you can contact a Hub team member. Just a reminder, Hub team members, if you could rename your name to have an asterisk so we know who you are. And here's just a little bit about how you can rename your Zoom profile. And then raising hand is also a great function that will help us sort through questions and make sure everyone's questions get answered. When you pre-register for our upcoming Echo sessions, it will allow you to receive any materials that we have in advance if they're available. And so if you would like to pre-register, you can do so with this link or QR code, and you'll be able to access this presentation through our Canvas page. So you'll be able to have this link here. And we will be giving out certificates of attendance for those who attend and fill out the survey. It is extremely important that you all fill out the survey. We love hearing your feedback, and we love knowing what we're doing well and what could be improved upon. And it's just really important. So we'll be sending that link in a few times throughout the session. If you could click on that, it's pretty short, and we're excited to hear from you. We have our Canvas page, and this is where we will post all of our recordings, slide presentations, and any handouts. And you should automatically be getting a link for that. But if you have any problems, you can email us. You can email Faustine at f.sagany@usu.edu. We have our Real Situations, Real Solutions presentations. If anyone is struggling with anything within their program, we would love to have you present. We are continuing to look for presenters for the next couple of months. So if your program is struggling with staff buy-in ideas, if you are someone who wants to know how to use a specific strategy, if there's some challenging behaviors that you just can't figure out how to deal with, we would love to have you present. So if you are interested, you can email sue.olson@usu.edu. Oh. So I'll let Tweety give a little overview of herself, but just a little bit. She has worked with the Pyramid Model Consortium a lot, and she is so experienced when it comes to emotional literacy and with early childcare, and we're super excited to have her here. And she'll be presenting today on emotional literacy and just some strategies and resources that can be used to help children learn that. So with that, if you guys have any questions throughout, I will be monitoring the chat, or you can raise your hand. And I'm sure Tweety will leave some time for questions at the end. And with that, I will turn the time over to you, Tweety.
Okay, and can I share my screen, Hannah?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, can everybody see that? Okay. Okay. So, hi, everybody. I'm really excited to be with you all today. And I've been with the pyramid since the very beginning. So now that's a long time ago now, like what, over 25 years ago, probably. So a lot of this is near and dear to my heart. And just as Hannah said, we're going to focus today on this emotional literacy part. So I had that I was going to get you to put this in chat, but I think just due to time here, what I want you to think about is how you're feeling right now. But do you remember how you learned about feelings? Like, how did you learn the names of feelings, what it feels like so you could identify them? Most of us will probably have a hard time and go, I don't really remember that part, because it's kind of something we gradually learn. And even as adults, we're still trying to learn about this emotional literacy part. So I want you to keep that in mind, because as we get started, I want you to think about several different things. So I'll share those. But this is your third training, but it's the second part. So this one's around the emotional literacy part. And as Hannah said, there are going to be lots of different resources throughout, some from Discovery Source, some from the Center on Pyramid Model Innovation, some from Head Start Center for Inclusion, as well as a lot of others. So what I'm going to do is, before our next training, when you get the handouts for that training, I'll have a resource sheet in there that will have all of the resources and the links from this training as well as the next training. And that way you can just literally click on the links and go straight to those resources. So let's start off and just think about, what do we even mean by emotional literacy? So it really is that developing ability to identify and express emotions in a healthy way. It's also that ability to be able to, an emotion happens and I feel it inside, and I'm beginning to understand what that means, and I have a label for it, and I'm starting to be able to tell the difference between different emotions, and especially those more complex emotions. And I'm getting better at expressing my feelings, as well as starting to really self-regulate in different situations. So if you think about just those 3 bullet points, those are like huge. I mean, this one piece, those are hard skills. And again, they're skills as adults that we sometimes really struggle with on a day-to-day basis, right? So we want to keep that in mind. These are so important for us to lay that foundation for, but they're also really hard skills. So we want to remember that, if you have 3-year-olds, they've only been around for 36 months. And they've got these big emotions that they don't have words for yet, or they don't have strategies for yet. And that's what we want to think about, how we can start laying that foundation for children. A 5-year-old's only been around 60 months. So these complex skills, just sometimes thinking about in months rather than years, helps us remember, especially when it's in the middle of one of those challenging behaviors or those meltdown kind of moments. Just remembering they hadn't been around very long. So we really need to be there to support them. The other thing I want us to think about is, we often hear a lot about literacy-rich environments. We don't talk that much about emotion-rich environments. So as we're going through these sessions, I want you to think about the environments that you have, that you've set up. And I'm not just talking about having photos of different emotions, or having books about different emotions in your classrooms, but I'm also talking about creating that emotion-rich environment where children feel safe, where they feel safe to be able to express all these emotions that they're feeling, so they can learn about those different emotions and label for those emotions and what they can do with those emotions. So just keep that in mind, that atmosphere that we create that allows this emotional literacy piece to happen. So I wanted to just show you in this one classroom, they had pictures of all the different children that they laminated and put on the little clips. And when a child was out, they had or absent that day, they had a special place where they put that photo of that child. And then as a group, they talked about what they could do to show this child that they missed them. So think about the atmosphere that you're creating there and that sense of empathy and kindness and learning about different emotions and how to share that. So I want to show you this quick little video. This little girl had been out for a week. Now, the teacher didn't say anything because she didn't know she was coming back that day. So when we create those kind of emotion-rich environments, look at what happened here when Tammy shows up.
Tammy's here. Okay. Oh, there is one. Look at this one over there. Oh, that's okay. Wait, let's get finished. You can go here. This one right here. Look. See, a group hug. Charlie, you got two. One group hug.
Okay, so that's what we're talking about. So keep in mind that emotion-rich environment and how we're setting up and creating those kind of environments for young children to learn these really hard skills. So the way we're going to break this down is when you think about what children need around emotional literacy, they need to know emotion words. Then they need to start connecting those emotion words that they're learning with what they feel on the inside. And then they need strategies for what to do with all those emotions, right? So today we're going to talk about, kind of that teaching those emotion words. And then for our next session, we're going to go a little bit deeper into that connecting some of those emotion words with what they're feeling as well as strategies. So that's how this is broken down. We also know that because these are complex skills, you need to provide lots and lots of opportunities for children to practice these skills. So kind of that show and tell where we're introducing different emotions, and then lots and lots of opportunities to practice, to have conversations, to connect with their feeling to those words, and then knowing that they've got it. So keeping in mind, how are our children doing? How do we know around this emotional literacy part? And what are we doing about it? Are we doing enough to make a difference? And then, so think across your children, but then also think about individual children. How are they doing? How do we know? And are we doing enough to make a difference? So that's where we want to keep thinking about all these possibilities. So in your Unpacking book, there is at the end of the emotional literacy chapter, which is chapter 14, there's a checklist of practices. And that's a really fun resource to, as a teaching team, or even just as a group of you, or as a community of practice, that kind of thing, to just kind of reflect on some of those and think about where you're at. And because a lot of these things we know you're already doing. So what we want to do is like really keep in mind those things that we're already doing, how can we bump it up a notch and do even more around that? Or how do we think about individual children and where they're at and provide more opportunities for them to practice, those that are struggling with this emotional literacy piece? So that's a great resource to go back to and look at. Okay, so let's kind of jump into this part around I need to know emotion words. So this is important for many, many reasons, because we know just vocabulary in general is important for children to have lots of vocabulary words. But when we're talking about emotion words or feeling words, that we know that when children have a larger and more complex feeling vocabulary, that it makes it easier for them when they're feeling those big emotions to discriminate between different feelings. And it also then makes it easier for them to be able to communicate to you and to others what they're feeling, as well as they get better and better at reading others' emotions. So this is a really important piece of this emotional literacy part. So I want you to think about the range of words that you teach, since we know that that larger vocabulary is going to make it easier for children. What kinds of words are you teaching children? So on the challengingbehavior.org website, there are lots of visuals, as well as Discovery Source in those materials have lots of visuals with a wide range of emotion words. And while those are, for children, they also help us kind of think about what words are we teaching? And that's why I want you to think about this piece. So really pay attention, take some data on what words you're using. What emotion words are you using? What emotion words are children using? How are they using them? Are they using them in the right context? And then based on those words, how can you teach a wider range of emotion words? So if you look at some of the research, it's pretty typical, or even listen to ourselves. We tend to fall back on that happy, mad, sad, glad. So we want to be really intentional and conscious of those words that we're using and making sure that we're really expanding on that. There's also a great resource, a family engagement activity on challenging behavior that's fun to get families engaged. And this example you can download and use, but it would also be fun to think about the words you are teaching and actually come up with your own little emotion activity that you could send home for families based on those emotions that you've been using in the classroom. So that link is really there. Okay. So direct teaching, is just literally where we have those emotion cards. We have books. We have photos on the walls. We label different emotions as children are feeling them, but we're directly teaching. Some people will pick one emotion word for a week that they really focus on, and that's not the only emotion word they're using, but they really focus on that one word. So people do this in lots of different ways. And then again, like I just said, that really taking advantage of when you see a child, and there's an opportunity there to label that emotion, like here, where this little girl, she had just she had just turned 3 and just moved into a preschool class. And the slide was a lot bigger on the playground, and it was a little scary to her. So being able not only to label that feeling, but also offer help around that so it's not as scary. Also think about those things like how are you feeling today, and the different ways that people might do that. And there are lots of different resources around different charts, as well as people have made their own feeling charts. The one that I put in here is an example. On the green one, how do you feel today? That has some of the old pictures from the pyramid when it was Cephal. And the reason I put this particular one on here is as they were expanding their emotion vocabulary, they added emotions to their how do you feel today list. And children would just come in and they would put their picture under how they were feeling. And then throughout the day, they could change it as their feelings changed. They could go and change where their photo was. So it gave an opportunity, for us to kind of model that, but for children to do that also. In this classroom, you know how a lot of people will do like a 50-word list around just vocabulary in general? They also did an emotion vocabulary list, and the kids got so excited about trying to come up with new emotion words that they were constantly looking and listening. And one little boy, so this teacher was telling me who did this, that after a weekend, one little boy came in on a Monday and he was like so excited because he had learned a new emotion word. And she said, "What is it?" And he said, "Aggravated." And she said, "Well, how did you learn that word?" And he said, "Well, my mommy told my daddy that she was really aggravated with him." And so I asked her what that was. So, that's what we want. We want them to get excited about learning new words. And so when we put those words up there, they're more than just words up there. I mean, they're really starting to get it. Another classroom had a mirror right where the children would come in the door and do their "How are you feeling?" check in. And so they always had an adult standing there. So the children would look in the mirror, and based on their facial expressions and things, they would figure out how they were feeling. That's a really nice way to kind of bump it up a notch a little bit, because they're not just labeling how they're feeling, but they're looking at their face and then talking about how they're feeling. Plus, that gives you an opportunity to have a second to talk with them and get a little bit more information about how they're feeling that day, right? And then there are lots of different books with different photos and really diverse photos, some really nice a range of emotion words. So there are lots of different books we could use also. So resource-wise, there's also the feeling wheels. So think about how you could, how you are using those, if you are already, and how you might expand on that. For example, in the picture, this teacher is using that book, Glad Monster, Sad Monster. But as she's reading that book, she also has a feeling wheel there. So as you're talking about how the different characters are feeling, children are finding that feeling emotion on that chart. So you're just adding that little bit of extra practice in there, and they're engaged because of the book. So another place that sometimes we miss an opportunity is a writing center. So think about some of the words that you might be working on, like proud in this example, and put something in the writing center where children can draw a picture about a time when they felt proud, or they can even get you to help them do a little book about when they felt proud. But it's another way to get them really more involved in what that emotion means, and really understanding those emotion words. Now, you've probably seen these Play-Doh mats on the challengingbehavior.org website. So these are really fun way, especially even to work some of that sensory piece in there for certain children that are going to help them and provide more opportunities for you to have conversations with children, because it is allowing them to have that sensory piece. But what I love about these is some of them have, I feel happy. And then they have a little cue of what a happy face might look like. And so children can then, put a happy face, or they're just some blank ones that they can do whatever emotion they want to. So just more practice opportunities there. Another idea here is having snack or meal talk mats. So these are where you do little mats, and like this one has words that they had been working on and talking about in this particular classroom. So you just make a little mat and laminate it. Some people have done it where each child at the table, they're almost like a little placemat. Others have just done one mat and they have it where it's bigger in the middle of the table, and they have conversations about how they're feeling right then. So what's nice about this one is if you have a child who doesn't have a lot of language, then this gives them an opportunity to participate by just maybe pointing or using sign language or whatever, however that child might communicate. But it's a great way to just have more conversations about, like if a child says they're feeling stressed, then they can talk a little bit about why they're feeling stressed. So it's just giving us more and more information so we can better support that child, as well as figure out, okay, they're using these words, but are they using it in the right context? Are they getting it yet? And then it helps us kind of plan better about how we're doing that. Lots of other ways, and I know, again, you're doing lots of these kind of things. You've seen these kinds of things before, but on the Barton Lab, which is at the Vanderbilt website, there are lots of different little games like emotion charades, lots of different emotion games, and those are free to download. I'll on your resource sheet, I'll have all these. But another one that we've had fun with is just getting a little, like the headband people wear in the winter, and putting the little Velcro thing on it. And when you first start off to introduce this to children, as the adult, you get them to pick a photo of an emotion and put it, stick it on there so you don't know what it is. And then they try to give you clues so you can guess what it is. And then they can then try that. So we're doing the same thing over and over, but we're just making a little bit more engaging so we can get them to practice. Or even pass the filling bags. We don't do it all the time. We just bring it out periodically. We pass it around, they pull out a picture, and they talk about how how they think that person or that child is feeling. Another thing is go on a fillings hunt. This always, I think, is fun because, they always love that book, We're Going on a Bear Hunt. So if they're kind of into that book, then go on a fillings hunt where you can do that in lots of different ways. You can have like the nervous picture so they know what they're looking for, but it's hidden somewhere. And they're going to go over things and under things and through things to try to find those emotion pictures. So that's a fun way to get them just to connect words with faces again. Okay, so more games. You can do matching games, and that's fun if you take actual photos of children in the classroom showing different faces, and then they can match them up, as well as bingo kind of games. And those are available. You can make your own, or those are available through like Discovery Source in those kits. Okay. Now, songs. And of course, we all know If You're Happy and You Know It, and we sing that song. And this one is where, one of the things that we just did in a program in Chicago that I wanted to put this one in here because they made a classroom book. So they had been singing this song, but they had also been having conversations around, okay, if you're sad and you know it, what do you do? Which might be different from cry a tear, boo-hoo, right? So they made a classroom book with the different children picking different emotions and then talking about what they would do. So then they would change the song up. They would use their book to change the song of, I might be sad, but this is what I would do. What that does, that's such a great idea because it also shows children there's not just one way to respond or react if you're feeling a certain emotion, that there are lots of different ways to respond, and that different people respond in different ways when they're feeling different emotions. So that's a great bump it up a notch one example also. And then if you look at this one, it just goes a little bit deeper because it's happy, happy, smiling faces. Look at my big grin. So again, you're kind of talking about how do you know that I'm happy, or how do you know that I'm sad? So what is it about my face that makes you think that? And then having visuals that go with that song. So it's not just the words, but it's also the visuals of where children can see that. Right. Because we know that when we have words and visuals, that children are much more likely to retain that information and really, really start to comprehend that. So another really fun idea is take 4 or 5 sheets of paper and cut a small hole in the first one, then a little bit bigger hole, a little bit bigger hole, a little bit bigger hole. Staple them together, put tape across the top. And then you can it's like being an emotion detective, which they love to do because you can get those little, magnifying glasses at the dollar store. And it really engages children and encourages them to practice some of these, trying to figure out what children are feeling in certain photos, if they can be an emotion detective, right? So like for this one, okay. And A Little Spot of Feelings is all about being an emotion detective. So you could use that book as a way to engage children and get them excited about being an emotion detective. Roaring Mad Riley is also another one where when he gets really mad, he bunches his fist up. So that's a great one to read and then talk about, what do you do when you feel really mad? I mean, that again, we'll talk about next time more, but you see how all these, it's hard to pull these pieces apart because the more they learn, the more conversations we have, the more they practice, the more these pieces start falling together. Okay. This is another song that it's from Wisconsin, their mental health group, but this is another fun one too. So if you need a new song that you hadn't done in a while, this one's To Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And it's a fun one because it's just about all of us have feelings. So it can, as you've been singing some of those songs that children engaged in, this will just give you one more resource. And I will put this one on your resource sheet also. Okay. All right, then on Monday when it rained, you've probably seen a million times if you've done different pyramid trainings, because this is one of the first books that we used. But I want to keep going back to that one because look at that range of words. Sometimes it's hard to find books that have that kind of wide range of words there. And there's also a book nook that goes with that, with lots of different fun ideas around using that book to promote social emotional development and emotional literacy. But also this is another opportunity to do a classroom book. So this class did on Monday When It Rained book. And the children they would pick a day and an emotion where something happened, and then they would come up with the story. The teacher wrote it, and then they took pictures of that. That's another one. We know they love to look at themselves, so they're going to practice it if they do that. Okay, I know I got to speed up a little here. So this is another resource just for if you have children who need adapted books. SherlockCenter.org has free downloads, and they have all these preschool books, and they're typical ones you have in your classroom. They have a lot of the feelings books, so you can download those for free and use those for adaptations. Another idea for classroom books, just again, kind of bump it up a notch. We may have had them do something that they feel excited about, or, I feel sad, but what do I do when I feel sad? So it has that little extra piece in there. For children who are struggling, you might not have a classroom book. You might just have a book for that child across the day and different feelings and things they can do. Okay. Think about how would you feel if, so things that are happening in a classroom, and so they'll relate to it. We're not going to use names of the children in the classroom, but we're going to use those situations and talk about how would that make you feel if that happened? And then what could you do? Okay. Worry. We know since COVID that we've seen so many children that are just anxious and worried. And so it's another opportunity to talk about when I'm feeling worried, right? Putting a name to that. So here's some different books. One teacher also did The Worry Monster, loves to eat worries. So the kids they could draw something and then go put it in the worry monster's mouth, as a way to kind of deal with that. But this little what if one, how you have some children that no matter what you say, they're going to say, but what if? But what if? And so this is a little what if monster. And it's such a good book, because then it flips at the end to, but because this is like, but what if I feel scared? I can ask for help. So instead of stopping with the what if when they're really worried or anxious about something, it starts giving them some new ways to kind of think about that. I'm gonna go back to the snack meal talk again. You can use characters from books that children are really engaged in to have conversations around this emotion piece around books. Patty Harmony is a worry detective. And so after reading that book several times, the teacher made a little meal talk sheet around the characters, and they talked about, like, because different characters get worried about different things in that book. So they talked about, which character that they most related to. They also had a worry detective. You can see their little the little apron that they did in their classroom with some different strategy things in it. Okay. So comfort captain. So think about this empathy part that we want to build on, because we're talking about these emotions, and being empathetic is part of that, right? So there are books we can use, but in this one classroom, they had a comfort captain. So that was part of some of the roles that children could play, and they had some tools that went with that. But let me show you this one. This little girl did not like being videotaped. The comfort captain. You'll see this, but watch what happens here. Uh-oh, maybe. Oh, wait, here it goes. Okay, so she wanted a hug. So when you think about bumping it up a notch, think about something like this. So you have those children who are really starting to understand and get these different emotions, and we built that emotion-rich classroom where they feel safe in doing that. And they're learning how to recognize when somebody needs comforted, and then they have strategies that they can use to do that. Okay. Right. Kindness is another thing that we don't think about. Kindness as being it's not an emotion, it's more of an action, right? Like, than it is an emotion. Although people often will say, when you think about the alphabet and different words to match, different emotion words to match each letter of the alphabet, kind often comes up. But the thing about kind that I just want to point out here is that so some research came out of Harvard not long ago, and it said between the ages of 4 and 7, there's this critical window of when children really start to develop these lifelong values and things that they take with them. And because of that, we really need to focus on this kindness and this empathy piece. And so when we think about, okay, kindness may not be an emotion word, but it's more of a behavior or an action, we want to build that sense. And that's how we build that empathy piece, is through that. So some more resources here around that empathy piece, because you have to be able to take somebody's perspective to be empathetic. So these are just some books with some activities. And again, I'll put that on your resource sheet. Hurry it up here. If you do things like you have a greeter, that's a great way to take someone else's perspective. I may want to hug everybody, but not everybody wants to be hugged. So I have to take that child's perspective and do what they want to do. So that's another way to really build that perspective there. Okay, this is they got huggers there. So another thing is, think about those opportunities that you have, like when you have a new child coming into the classroom. Getting children to think back on, do you remember what it felt like the first day of school when you didn't know anybody and you didn't know what was happening or what would happen throughout the day or where to hang your coat, or, and because again, they're going to think about what those emotions are. So a fun thing to do is the very first day of your class to actually get children, like, make a list or make a chart of how they're feeling. It doesn't have to be connected with specific children. It can just be the different emotions. And then when something like this comes up, you can put that back up and have those conversations. And then once children talk about and remember how they felt, then they can figure out different ways that they can help the new child feel welcomed into this classroom. Okay. And just those opportunities of, like, this book is about friendship and sharing, but don't miss those opportunities to talk about those emotions and label
Well,
them.
yes, he does want to eat the ice cream, and maybe Groovy Joe will share. But look at his face; his eyes are big. His eyebrows are kind of slanted down. What's he feeling, Gideon? You just said a word though. You said that Groovy Joe is he's worried. I wonder why he's so worried.
I mean, what a great example of kind of taking advantage, right, of that. And then don't forget, as we're thinking about, we're teaching these emotion words, once they start getting them, then we want to get to that part where you can feel more than one emotion, right? I mean, let's say my mom just had a baby and I'm very excited, but I'm also a little jealous, right? So I can have those two feelings at the same time. So we want them to kind of understand that. In this book, I'm Happy Sad Today, it gives great examples of just like preschool kinds of things. But then towards the end of the book, she starts making up her own words like feeling loved and feeling happy. She's love happy. So, it kind of adds that kind of funny, fun kind of part in there. Just as we're kind of winding down and closing here, as we're teaching these words, we want to be really careful with saying things like, let's say this little boy has just built his block tower and somebody comes by and they accidentally knock it over, not on purpose, accidentally. And he gets upset and we look up and it's like, oh, you're okay. He didn't mean to. You can build another one. Think about how confusing it is to children when we've been trying to teach them these emotion labels and these feelings that they're having. And then all of a sudden we're saying things like, oh, you're okay, you're okay. It's like dismissing that feeling of that emotion. It goes back to that emotion-rich classroom where children feel safe to kind of experience that whole range of emotion. So that kind of comes out of our mouth naturally to say, oh, you're okay. Child falls down. Oh, you're okay. But we can still say, oh, did that scare you? Yeah, or, and then assure them they're okay. But we don't want to just dismiss the emotion by saying you're okay. Okay, so this time we kind of focused on I need to know emotion words. Next time, we did a little bit of this time, but we're going to go back into deeper about making that link between how they're feeling that emotion. And then we're going to talk about a whole range of strategies that we can teach children so these pieces start coming together for them. Okay, so any questions or thoughts around this part or this piece?
This is Jana Adamson. I just think you've shared some really awesome ideas with us. I'd never heard about the comforter captain.
Isn't that cool? Yeah.
Just
Good.
getting
And
those your interactions.
yeah. So I hope there were some ideas that kind of spark, because again, I know you're already doing a lot of these, but we do want to think about what could we add on? What could we do so children get more practice?
I had a question.
Okay.
This is Ashley Sparrow. I'm a speech pathologist, and I grew up with a mother who taught you not to feel, right? So I don't know how I'm feeling a lot. So I found this like emotions wheel.
Uh-huh.
And so, I'll come up and I'll figure out like how I'm feeling. Or if like my 6-year-old who has ADHD is like really upset about something and I ask her, what are you feeling? She says, I don't know. So we go over to this picture, which is so great.
Yes, I love that. Thank you for sharing that, because that's a great way to have those conversations, right? And to connect it, because it's what they're feeling right then in that moment. Yeah.
And to know they can go and figure it out themselves, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So
and that's
it's helpful for me too.
Yeah. And when you think about social emotional development, that's that beginning that sense of competence and confidence, right? So they're starting to feel more competent and confident around this emotional literacy piece.
Yes. And I even got a pillow that has the same emotion wheel on it. So it's on her couch, you know, so
That's
anytime
great.
they're bored or whatever, it's just there and they can look at it. So
Yeah, love it.
I love all the ideas. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for sharing. Okay, so Hannah, do you guys go to the case study now or?
Yes. Last chance for any questions before we head over to the presentation, the real situations, real solutions presentation. Okay, great. Well, I will make sure to have Tweety's contact information on our Canvas page. Thank you so much, Tweety. This was amazing. I love all the practical things we can do to help kids learn emotions because it is something that needs to be taught.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, thank you so much. You're welcome to stay for the case presentation, but you certainly do not have to.
Okay, all right,
And-
thank you.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Tweety. Sue, do you want to take over?
I can. So, you want me to share my screen?
Yes, unless you want me to
I
the
can
slides.
do that. Yeah, just pull it up. So while I'm pulling it up, I'll share with you why I'm presenting today and not the person who submitted this. So I had the opportunity to visit with someone, Nancy, who was interested in becoming a pyramid model site. And we chatted about, you know, why she's interested and such. And I said, wow, you know what, you should join our echo trainings because it will be, I think it will provide you with a lot of information for the things that you're interested in. And so then I said, and how about being a presenter? Because I'm always sales pitching, you know, everything. And she said, great, I'll do that. And then she's had some illness and just couldn't kind of get things together, but she did share her information with me so that we could do this activity today. And then what we gather from the breakout groups today, we will also share back with her. So this is the information that she shared with me. So her name is Nancy Roylance. She owns a business called Early Learning Education. It is up here in the north end of Utah. She provides childcare for children ages 1 through 6, Monday through Fridays. Those are her hours. This is their vision, is to create an extraordinary environment where children and teachers thrive and families are supported. And she wants it to be a place where children are unconditionally loved and accepted. She wants to learn she wants children to learn foundational skills in developmentally appropriate ways and develop positive attitudes towards learning. So this is a little more information about Nancy. She has a degree from BYU, Idaho in professional preschool education. Her childcare has only been in operation for 14 months, so relatively new business, trying to get their feet on the ground and get things pulled together. She says she has 4 young teachers. One has her CDA and 2 are working on getting their CDA certification, but overall, they don't have a lot of experience. You know, and everybody has to start somewhere, right? But the nice thing I hear from Nancy, she's so invested in her staff learning good information and good training. And so one of the downsides, and we hear that a lot from a child cares and early interventions and Part B preschools, one of the hardest things is finding time for staff to receive training and professional development. But she states that they do try to find 1 to 2 hours a month where they can focus on what's going well and what are their needs. Her biggest concerns
for her staff or that they're young and inexperienced teachers. There's limited time for professional development. They need more real-time learning opportunities for teachers where it's kind of like, you know, they're in their classrooms, they're teaching, they could be coached, they could be mentored. So she's really looking for how that can work. And then she's worried as an owner, operator, that her investment in her teacher professional development will be lost with teacher turnover. And I think that's also another real concern that I think we all have, that our investment, and I think that also sometimes becomes that barrier to investing in our employees and our staff. So she really acknowledged that as a true issue. So this is additional information. They use the creative curriculum for preschoolers and the Nature Explorer, which is a nature-based play and learning spaces. I'm not unfamiliar with that. Others may know about that. They have 3 classroom, toddler, preschool, and kinder. And again, she said they have teachers working on their CDAs. This is the things that she was hoping to just get some great feedback from this group. So Hannah, I think what we've been doing is how many breakout groups do we have today, Faustine or Hannah?
We'll be having 4.
4. Well, maybe we'll get one question could be assigned to 2 groups. I know in the time we usually have left, the time we do a little breakout and then we come back and do some wrap up. I don't know, Hannah, Faustine, what's your recommendation? Should each group focus on one question, or should all groups focus on all 3?
I was planning on having each group focus on one question, and the 4th group can just start with whatever question they would like to.
That's the optional group. So these are her questions, or where she was looking for feedback. What is the best way to establish behavior expectations that are supported in the classroom and at home? What are circle times or group activities that can be used to teach social skills? Whoever gets the middle question can just like feedback off of all these great ideas. And to have people watch this recording, because Tweety's presentation today was recorded, but to social skills and or helping children understand each other's emotions. And the other question is, how do you get parents more involved in their children's childcare learning besides sending home handouts? So if we focus on things that are around emotions and social emotional development, that would be she stated that would be a really good target for her, because she really wants her families who are working parents to know what they're doing at school and to follow through and care and have the same kind of conversations at home. So those are the three areas that she's interested in. Questions that people might have right now before we go into breakouts that maybe I can answer.
I have a quick question, Sue. Are they joining the pyramid model right now, or are they working on some of these foundational things first?
So they will join. They really are. They're going to start the exploration stage with us after the first of the year. To be honest, our plates are really full with the programs we have, and so they do plan to start exploration with us, and probably in January, February. So the Echo is a great place for her to get information while they're kind of on our waiting list. So thanks, Aubrey. Other questions? All right, Hannah, I think we're ready to go to breakouts.
Great, sounds good. And today in our breakout rooms, we have Sue, if you could lead one, and then Mandy, Betsy, and Kurt. I will resend all of the questions into the chat. And then Sue, if you could take that first question on what is the best way to establish behavior expectations that are supported in the classroom and home. And then Mandy, if you could start with what circle time or group activity ideas could be used to teach social skills and or helping children understand each other's emotions. Betsy, if your group could start with how do you get parents more involved besides sending home handouts? And Kurt, you can start with any question and move on to whichever one you want. And it doesn't matter which question you start with. If you want to move on from the conversation and talk about the other questions, you are welcome to. Just a reminder for the hub members leading, if you could invite someone to take notes. And for all of you, we would love, once you go into your breakout rooms, to all turn on your cameras. We would love for everyone to participate. We know everyone has great ideas, even if they aren't the most experienced in a certain topic. And if you have any questions, you're welcome to reach out. So yeah, with that, we will move over to the breakout rooms. Okay, I think we have just about everyone back from the breakout rooms. And we would love for either the hub members or the note takers to share one or two things that you guys discussed with your questions. And I will start with Sue, and then we'll go to Mandy, and then Betsy, and then Kurt. So Sue, take it away.
Mute. I took notes, but I'm going to call on a couple of my people. So Aubrey, could you recall one thing we talked about and share? I didn't prep everybody for
Sure,
this.
that's all right. One thing I heard some of the people I was working with talk about that I found really important when it came to coming up with some behavior expectations was to involve the children as they're able to what they think would make a safe, supportive community they'd want to be a part of, as well as involving the families and asking them what, what's important to them, what their concerns are. So I really liked the idea of involving everybody in the conversation.
And because I think we have time, Erica, could you share? You had a great idea about never getting those handouts and what else we could do instead.
Yeah, I was just saying as a parent, actually my daughter has ADHD, so I never get the handouts. They never come, I never get them. Even if I'm going right through a backpack, I've done something with them, or it's gone, or the email a day. But what her teacher did last year was she would send out text messages to the families, and she would send, here's what we're doing on the trip, or here's what we're, and I could refer to that easily, but she would also send out
Oh, I think Erica might be a little froze. The additional those not really nice text to let parents know what's going on. We also talked about programs that grab a quick picture of their child sharing and saying, we caught Sally sharing with a friend today, and all those kind of great things to carry over into the home. So, thanks, Erica. I hope you can hear me. And thanks, Aubrey. And we had a great group. Sandra was on, Amy, Melody, great group.
Great, thank you so much, Sue. And I love that idea about the text messages. I know I'm not always great at texting my email, but texts are a lot easier for me personally. Okay, Mandy, does your group want to share a couple points you discussed?
Yeah, we would love to. We had a great discussion and just really reviewed the resources that Tweety shared with us, and how great they are, that they can be used in the classroom and they can also be shared with the families. Did anyone from my group want to share anything else? Okay, I think we're good.
Awesome, thank you. And then Betsy, would your group share a couple of things?
Sure, we had the same text message idea, and for years that's what teachers have said to me. They respond the best to text, and pictures, videos, anything that you can text to them helps that. Also social media, putting things on social media, having a class dojo app and putting things there is helpful. They can get access to it much easier that way. So, and maybe trying to meet with parents a few minutes before, after school, if there are drop-offs. And just validating their feelings, if they are, upset about something. So validating those feelings, it's sad to have to put away the toys, but we'll get them again tomorrow. But, just validating what they're feeling and also expanding on their language. You're frustrated. So not only are you sad, but using those other words like frustrated, you're frustrated because we have to stop. So all of those.
That's great. And Kurt, we'll move over to your group. Hi, Kurt. I think you're muted still.
I think you're right. Mouth moves faster than the technology does. We were the fourth group, so we took on the first question about behavior expectations. There are a lot of really great ideas, just a few of them. One of them is just to encourage that consistency. We kind of dove into how do we sell that to parents that have had a long day. Maybe they've been at work and they come home and those kids are just going, and you're just like at the end. And I think it was Maria came up with a really good suggestion that I've seen my kids use with their kids. I told them, I just say, you sit down and eat until your food's gone. That was my parenting style. Not the best example. But my daughter, she just says, well, do you need to have a timeout to her 1.5, 2-year-old? Do you need to take a minute? And she went in the other room and sat down for a minute of her own volition and came back. So not varying, and in those tough times, taking that little bit of time out. And then also what was kind of hit on before is that any emotion's okay. Like Betsy says, I understand that you're frustrated about this, but this is what we've got to do, and trying to help them validating their feelings while at the same time making sure we're still consistent about what behaviors we expect. So it's a great discussion.
Thank you, everyone, for your participation today. Just a reminder, for those of you who took notes, if you could send them to Faustine, her email's in the chat. And then again, to get your certificate, you do need to fill out that post-session survey. It's short, and we really appreciate those of you who do fill out the survey. And I just resent it in the link in the chat. So if you have any problems, let me know. Our next session will be January 22nd from 1 to 2:30, and we will be having Tweety come back. She'll be doing part B of teaching emotional literacy. And I believe that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining. And if you wanted to do a real situations, real solutions presentation, email Sue at sue.olson@usu.edu. Thank you all. Have a great day.